Well, it's a really lovely start to the allotment week, and I'm on the allotment really early today just because it's a lovely day, and I had to take a lot of the lower leaves off these brassicas because of real problems with whitefly. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them a slow release nitrogen feed, hoof and horn, in the hope to sort of stimulate new green growth and get these colettes growing, because there's hardly anything. There's little buds and just the start of a few little leaves, but very little. So they've got a lot of growing to do in the next couple of months. So yeah, I don't normally do a mid-season feed, but I think it's worth it in this case. And we had some really high winds, so I've taken all the squash off my crown princes, because as you can see, they just died. It's really weird, you know. I can only think it was the high winds because we didn't have a frost, and it just happened just overnight basically. They just all died. Whereas things like the centre cuts and the trumbuccinos, they're fine, but all the crown prince just wiped out. And I was worried that if I left the fruits on, they would just fall to the ground. So my first job for today is to take all these Asian greens out. I was hoping these would last well into autumn, but unfortunately that hot weather just drove them all to seed, and yeah, they're just a horrible mess now. So I can save a few of them for harvest today, maybe the tatsoi and some other bits and pieces, but I need to get this bed really replanted. And I'm just going to put Asian greens probably back in it again, either that or spinach. Maybe I'll put Asian greens over there. But yeah, so I won't be totally without Asian greens for a few weeks. But yeah, it's a shame when things go wrong. But if you're prepared and you've got spare seeds or spare plants, then it's fairly quick to recover at this time of year. Leave it a bit later and it's basically unrecoverable. So let's get this cleared. So very frustratingly, even this bed, which has never really grown any traditional brassicas, has got clubroot. And so although I do sort of grow radishes and turnips and things like that in these beds, no Brussels sprouts or cabbages or cauliflowers or anything. So yeah, I think I've got clubroot on the whole plot, and that means it must have been contaminated compost, either contaminated by me or contaminated by something else. So finding that clubroot decided me that I'm going to put spinach in this bed rather than another brassica. I do want to put cauliflowers and calabrese in this bed in the spring, and I think I'll still do that because I can't let the fact I've got clubroot stop me growing everything. I think just early season brassicas are probably the best bet, and then they're out the ground before the clubroot sort of really starts to infect the roots in earnest. And I'll just put a decent amount of lime in. I've just limed this bed now just to get it started, and put a bit of hoof and horn in just because I had it out. And obviously I want these plants to put on a nice burst of growth as quickly as possible. So I do tend to pack my spinach in quite tightly in winter, because it's not going to grow very much, it's not going to grow very fast, so the plants aren't really going to crowd each other out. And if this was a variety that I was going to keep going until spring, obviously in spring these plants would grow really big and there would be near enough space for them. But giant winter isn't a great spinach for spring. It it rapidly goes to seed. So it's a lot better, I think, to sow a good spring variety later on in the year. So I'll probably start sowing mine sometime in October and let it overwinter as small plants so that it comes on stream in spring and gives me a nice sort of, well, a nice continuous harvest, you know, just as the giant winter is finishing. But the giant winter is so much better than any of these varieties that also do well in spring, like Medania, in that it just keeps on growing so strongly through winter. These are quite small plants, but I'd rather get them planted out, to be honest, rather than leaving them in the modules, because we're going away on holiday for a few days and I'd really like to minimise the number of plants that I've got in modules whilst I'm on holiday. So these spinach are 20 days old. Just kind of perfect, really. I like generally to plant them out about 3 weeks. Sometimes a little bit later, depending on the time of year, but yeah, they do well at this age. Fortunately, this bed is lovely. It's lovely and fluffy. It had potatoes in it, and then obviously it had those Asian greens in it. It's got a few cutworms in it, and I've tried to get them out as I was going through the bed, you know, sort of working in the fertiliser. I found 3 or 4, so I'm hoping that's most of them. Spinach seems less susceptible to cutworms than lettuce though, so I'm hopeful. I'm always hopeful. You can't garden if you're not hopeful, can you, really? And as I so often do, I changed my mind and put a cold frame top on here because it's spinach and not Asian greens, and spinach is really gonna like this now. We're getting to October and the nights are getting cold, and spinach loves a cold frame, so it does need watering. And since both of these beds are spinach, mine is lettuce and more spinach, I could put a double plate in here so that both beds are supported off the same support, and because they both need exactly the same amount of ventilation. So now I'm going to do the Asian greens. I'm going to put them in this bed that used to have carrots in it. There's a few carrots left, so I'm going to take those out. Still got carrots in there, so I can leave this mesh on. So if there is any issues with flea beetle still around, this will address it. And as I said, the mesh also just does keep the slugs and snails out a little bit. It's not a perfect guarantee. Anyway, let's get this moved off and get this bed tidied up. So very little is going to plan for me today. When I was in the car transporting these seedlings, they managed to slide on top of each other and crush a whole load of them. So I thought I'd got 40. I think I might be lucky now just to have 25 viable plants. But that's kind of helped me decide to put them into this half bed, really, because at least I can fill this one. And then this bed, which was meant to be completely clear of whitefly, since it's a carrot bed, it's had this fine mesh on it, had dandelion in it. And, you know, dandelion and whitefly go together. So it ended up having loads of whitefly in it. And so I've had to spray it, which I very rarely do because I don't generally worry about whitefly, but I don't really want to get these seedlings off to such a bad start that they get, you know, infested with whitefly. So yeah, I've sprayed it with pyrethium, and yeah, well, we'll see whether I actually managed to get them established, because I'm going to have these in salads, and so I don't mind so much having a little bit of whitefly on leaves that can just be washed off if I'm just going to use those leaves in for cooking. But yeah, not so great for leaves that are going to be in salad mixes. So anyway, these are red pak choi and komatsuma. The komatsuma is looking a lot nicer. Maybe that's just because it didn't get quite as squashed. And because these are a little bit leggy, hopefully you can see that I've pushed them quite nice and deep into the soil. So now there's no visible stems, although there are some seed leaves touching the soil, which obviously will get eaten away. But I'm pretty happy that they're going to get a good start in there now. So next up, I'm in the Polytunnel, and I've got this Claytonia, which is looking really lovely, and it needs planting, and so I'm going to plant it into these tubs because it's the only place I've got, unfortunately. There's a few wireworms. I'm going to take these out. But other than that, this is homemade compost, so it doesn't need any amendments. I don't need very many, unfortunately, in here, so I'm not going to be able to use all of these, I don't think. But I'll get 3, I think, in each pot, because they grow into pretty substantial clumps, really. And this will give me a really nice early harvest, and then I can clear these tubs probably and get them replanted sometime, maybe even as early as, you know, late October. I might replant them, we'll see. I might just keep the Claytonia going, but I'm going to have a lot of Claytonia by the time I get to November. So that's all planted. Now, I've never actually planted Claytonia quite so early under cover. I expect it's just going to grow really fast. I've never had any problems with mildew or anything like that. You can grow Claytonia outside all the way through winter, but the leaf quality is nowhere near as good as the leaf quality from plants grown under cover. So yeah, I'm focusing on undercover plantings this year. Quality is my objective. Because we're away this week, not doing a proper harvest, just getting a few little bits and pieces just to take with us. So we've got a few peppers, a few little salad carrots and turnips, cooking carrots. We're kind of just trying to take all these like immature little squashes off to use now, because they won't mature for storage, so they probably rot otherwise. Beetroot, just a few apples and pears, a few cherry tomatoes and a few paste tomatoes. Actually, these are really nice just eaten as a fresh tomato as well. A little bit of spinach, lettuce for the few days we're away, and some leeks and salad onions and celery. So yeah, just a little bonus harvest for you. My name's Steve, this is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.